ينشر الهدي إيمانا وموعظة فبالجهالة قد خابت مساعينا. غابت مناقبنا واسود حاضرنا غابت مناقبنا واسود حاضرنا وأوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Sulaiman Ravat Show. It's a Sunday morning here in Sunning Hill, Johannesburg. And we are coming to you live the second Sunday during this Mubarak and blessed month of Ramadan. Can you believe it? Last week Sunday we were talking to it was the first fast of this Mubarak and blessed month. Already 1 week down, we already saying goodbye. We are saying farewell to the first week in this Mubarak and blessed month of Ramadan. May Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala accept the fast that we have kept thus far. And may Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala forgive the deficiencies in our fast and in our ibadat thus far. Already 9 juz of the Quran Kareem has been recited in Taraweeh Salat tonight. The 10th juz of the Quran Kareem will be recited tonight, inshallah. 1/3 of the Quran Kareem will be completed in Taraweeh Salat tonight. Can you believe that? So once again, the point is being emphasized that Ramadan is not waiting for us. Ramadan is not waiting for us to find a routine, to find our feet. Ramadan is not waiting for us to find some sort of momentum. We need to take from Ramadan as much as we can, as quickly as we can. Otherwise, Ramadan will just pass us by. So let's continue to make dua to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala grants us barakah, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala accepts our ibadah, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala keeps us strong, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala keeps us healthy, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala keeps us focused, and most importantly, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala keeps us sincere. Because in the end of the day, if we do things without sincerity, if we do things with ulterior motives, if we do things so that we can feel good about it, if we do things with the intention of showing other people, then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is not willing to accept. This is what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had warned against. He said that the greatest fear that I have for my ummah is ash-shirkul khafi, ash-shirkul azghar, the hidden shirk, the latter shirk, or the lesser shirk rather. Meaning that the actual shirk is when you associate a partner with Allah, when you're worshipping Allah. You worship an idol, for example, and you associate a partner with Allah in that sense. Or you say that Allah has a son, or Allah has a spouse, or Allah has a father. Waliyadu billah. But the lesser shirk is when you associate someone with Allah, when you're making intention that I'm doing it for the pleasure of Allah, but I also want recognition from someone. I also want applause, and I also want an acknowledgement from someone. That is something which is wrong. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, I am free of all partners. Either you do it only for me, or otherwise you don't do it at all. And if you do it for me and someone else, then I'm sorry. So Huffaz out there, you ought to be reciting only for the pleasure of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Not so that people can give you, a good word, or so that you can be complimented, or so that you can be recognized. Because if you do that, then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is not going to reward you even partially. Allah is going to say, listen, you didn't do it for me at all. So even that basic level of acceptance is not there. Then after that, there are greater levels of sincerity. One is you do it only for the pleasure of Allah, then you are sincere. And then the greater your sincerity, the greater the reward. May Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala make us from amongst the mukhlisin. May Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala make us from amongst those who are truly and are genuinely sincere. Now, as I said, we are coming to you live from our studios in Sunning Hill this Sunday morning. I'm sure you are getting going this morning, finding your feet for the Sunday that is ahead of you, whatever your plans may be. We commenced with a discussion last week, and I said we are going to run this discussion over a few Sundays, possibly over every Sunday up to the end of the month of Ramadan. And the topic of the series that we are running, and this topic that we are discussing, is a heart which is free of hatred and malice. A heart which is free of hatred and malice. I'm going to do a quick recap of what we discussed last week, and then we'll continue with the discussion for this week, inshallah. Last week we mentioned that Ramadan is obviously a special occasion. Amongst these special occasions that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has granted us. Just a few weeks ago we had Laylatul Bara'ah, the 15th night of Sha'ban. And amongst the people who are listed as deprived on the 15th night of Sha'ban, one of the categories of people who are listed as deprived of the special mercies and the special blessings of Allah are those people who have hatred and malice, rancor and enmity in their hearts. So whilst Allah's special doors of mercies and blessings are open, you are deprived because of the hatred in your heart. Then we also discussed last week the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, تعرض أعمال الناس في كل جمعة مرتين يوم الاثنين ويوم الخميس. that 2 times in the week, 2 times in the week, the angels present the deeds of man to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And Allah makes a decision with regards to the forgiveness of everyone, except those two in whose hearts there is shahna, in whose hearts there is hatred, in whose hearts there is malice and enmity. Allah says, these two utruku hadain, these two leave them until they can resolve the issue. And we explain that why is it that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala does not make a decision of forgiveness with regards to those two between whom there is an issue that has resulted in hatred and malice in their hearts. And we explain that only that person can be forgiven by Allah in terms of the ultimate forgiveness who has iman. And hatred and malice is such a thing that it consumes you to such an extent that ultimately it can compromise your iman. Ultimately it can totally consume all of your good deeds. And hence Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, with these two we have to leave the matter for now. Because if they allow that malice and that hatred to fester in the heart, to grow in the heart, it could ultimately compromise the iman and deprive them of eligibility for forgiveness. May Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala protect us. And we explained last week as well that you get those people who are very pious, who are very punctual with their salah, who fast regularly, who recite Quran in abundance. You get those people who give a lot of charity. They are known to be pious people, people who are obedient to Allah, who follow the instructions of the deen, who uphold the commandments of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. But when they allow hatred and malice to enter their hearts, then that hatred and malice strikes at the very foundation of your deen. It strikes at the very stability of your morality. Now all of a sudden fair play goes out of the window. All the rules pertaining to justice goes out of the window. And I explained last week that even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the greatest of Allah's creation, was cautioned in this regard. When he was going to Makkah now, being in a position of strength, when he was going into Makkah now as a conqueror, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said to him, we know that you have a history with these people. They have done a lot of wrong to you. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. But this is no license for you to be unjust. اِعْدِلُوا. You still have to be just. وَأَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. That is what taqwa is all about. Now, many a pious person, when things become personal, when they feel aggrieved, when they feel that they have been wronged, and they allow hatred and malice to enter their hearts, then they throw caution out of the window. And they allow revenge and the yearning for revenge to consume them. They still continue to perform their salah and they still continue to do their good deeds. But notwithstanding all of that, they start doing acts which are unjust. They start doing things which are totally in conflict with the Sharia, which consume the rewards of the good deeds that they do, and which turn them from being the oppressed people into the oppressors. Hence Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in one hadith which we discussed last week, that should I not show you something which is better than fasting and better than salah and better than giving charity, and that is to reconcile differences. Because differences there'll always be. There'll always be issues between people. Humans are such that our temperaments are different, our levels of intelligence are different, our preferences are different, our approaches are different. But try and nip it in the bud as soon as possible. Try and resolve issues as soon as possible. Because when you allow for that hatred to come into the heart, and then when things become personal, the best of people, sometimes you'll say, but I can't imagine, man, this man. Now that, the issue became personal, he's such a pious person. He's known to be a level-headed person. But now because it was his daughter that was given talaq, or because it was his son that was accused or implicated, it's like the man has gone mad. It's like the man has no sense of what is right and wrong and what is fair and what is, what is the sense of decorum, and he just loses himself. So Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala warns us against that, warns us against having a heart which is filled with hatred and malice. And then towards the end of the discussion last week, we said that where does hatred and malice come from? There are different, inlets, if you like. The one is when you allow ill feeling to come into your heart. We cannot ignore reality. The reality is that there will be issues. There will be people who will do wrong to you. But even though they do wrong to you, you must be very quick in forgiving them. If you allow ill feeling to come into your heart, it's going to quickly translate into malice and hatred. And when it translates into malice and hatred, then it's going to consume you. And it's to your disadvantage. It's to your disadvantage. Because then you'll be performing salah. When a man has an issue now, when a man feels that he's been wronged and he allows hatred and malice to come into his heart, he goes to the masjid to perform salah, but in his salah he's thinking about that person. That person did this wrong to me. He comes out of the masjid in the parking lot, he's just talking about that. At night he's twisting and turning, he can't sleep properly, he's thinking about that. This is something which is wrong. This is something which we should abstain from. This is something which we should protect ourselves against. It's not to the advantage of that person, it's to your own advantage not to have hatred towards that person in your heart. And we gave the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this regard. Excuse me. We explained and we said that look at the occasion of Taif. how they ill-treated Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even after he left Taif, there was no personal vendetta, there was no grudge. He, excuse me, the month of Ramadan is quite taxing on the throat. So the carburetors clog every now and again, as my good friend Ibi Dawji would say. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow it to become personal. Rather, he looked at the opportunity and he introspected, he reflected, he looked inwards. Similarly, the occasion of Uhud, when he was so personally afflicted that he lost his own Mubarak tooth, and his uncle Hamza was not only killed but the body mutilated. And yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allahumma hdi qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh Allah, guide my people because they don't know. They don't know. Oh Allah, they're doing out of ignorance. So he tried to understand why they were doing what they were doing. So these were some of the issues that we discussed last week. And then we said, we came to the point where we said we're going to discuss. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi had said that there are 8 things, there are 8 consequences that flow from a heart that contains hatred and malice. And we were going to start discussing those 8 things, the first being jealousy. But then the call started to come in and we didn't really get into the discussion on the 8 consequences that flow from having hatred and malice in the heart. But let me just tell you what was the question that we posed last week to our viewers. And then we'll pose the question for this week, inshallah. The lines will be open a little later on. And then we go for our first break. Now, the question that we asked last week, and alhamdulillah, we got some good response. We said, why is it that so few of us have hearts that are free of malice and hatred? The learned amongst us, the aged amongst us, the pious amongst us, senior, junior, everyone seems to have this hatred and malice in our hearts. Why is it that so few of us have hearts that are free of hatred and hatred and malice? And we had some good interaction with our viewers last week. Now, this week I want to ask another question. And as I said, a little later on in the program, inshallah, we will open the lines. But you can start giving thought to this question from now. The question is, what is the first step? What is the first step that we need to take to cleanse our hearts of hatred and malice? What is the first step that we need to take to cleanse our hearts of hatred and malice? The lines will be open a little later on in the program, inshallah. Right now, though, we go for a break.
فبالجهاد بنى الإسلام قوته فبالجهاد بنى الإسلام قوته.
Welcome back. You are watching the Sulaiman Ravat Show live this Sunday morning on ITV, and we continue our discussion on the topic and a series that we are running on Sunday mornings during this month of Ramadan, a heart free of malice and hatred. A heart free of malice and hatred. Now, before the break, I was doing a recap of what we discussed last week. Now, I want to continue the discussion. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi has said that there are 8 consequences, there are 8 things that flow from having hatred and malice in the heart. And the first among these 8 things, and perhaps the most destructive of all 8, is jealousy. Now, jealousy is such a thing, because when you have hatred and malice in your heart, then you become jealous of the person towards whom you have hatred and malice. And you're constantly in pursuit of seeking an opportunity now to harm that person, because you feel that that person has wronged you, and you feel that that person now needs to be taught a lesson. You feel that that person needs to be proven a point. You feel that that person needs to be shown in a negative or in a bad light. And as a result, you're always after that person. Maybe not necessarily in a physical sense, but you're always on a lookout. Now, when you're constantly obsessed with that person, you're constantly focused on that person, you're not going to have much opportunity to do good deeds, are you? You're not going to have much opportunity to be able to pursue that which is beneficial to your own worldly affairs and to your own affairs of the year after. And even if you get an opportunity to do good deeds, then the rewards that you get from those good deeds, because of this jealousy now that you have towards this person for whom you have hatred and malice, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is going to take the reward of those good deeds and pass it on to that person. That's why Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said that jealousy is a shaver of good deeds, and a person needs to be very careful with regards jealousy. And a jealous person is a person who is in perpetual punishment. This is something that we need to understand. A jealous person is in self-inflicted punishment, because there will always be someone who has more than you, who has achieved more than you, who has excelled to a higher extent than you. a person who's got more fame than you, has got more wealth than you, a person who gets more recognition than you. Like Imam Ghazali has said, وَالْحَسُودُ هُوَ الْمُعَذَّبُ الَّذِي لَا يُرْحَمُ. A jealous person is that person who's constantly being punished. He does not receive any mercy. وَلَا يَزَالُ فِي عَذَابٍ دَائِمٍ. He's in constant punishment. Why? فإن الدنيا لا تخلقت عن خلق كثير من أقرانه ومعارفه ممن أنعم الله عليهم بعلم أو مال أو جاه فلا يزال في عذاب دائم في الدنيا إلى موته. There'll always be someone who has achieved a little bit more than you, who has gained a little bit more than you, who has secured a little bit more than you. So you'll constantly be jealous. You'll be jealous of someone's car, another person's house, another person's wife, another person's business, another person's profile, another person's eloquence, another person's dress code. And you'll constantly be restless. You'll constantly be, discontented. You'll constantly be dissatisfied. So you're constantly in self-inflicted punishment as a result of your jealousy. And that's the punishment of this world. وَلَعَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أَشَدُّ وَأَكْبَرُ. And the punishment that awaits a jealous person in the year after is far greater and far more severe. And he says that you must realize that jealousy is the opposite of loving for your brother what you love for yourself. بل لا يصل العبد إلى حقيقة الإيمان ما لم يحب لأخيه ولسائر المسلمين ما يحب لنفسه. He says that you claim to be a Muslim. You claim that I have Iman in my bosom. I am a Muslim. I am a believer in the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yet you don't love for your brother what you love for yourself. When he achieves what you yourself would like to achieve, then you become jealous over what he has achieved, and then you call yourself a Muslim, but you can never be a Muslim. You can never truly be a Muslim. You can never genuinely be a Muslim until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And he says, Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi alayhi, that jealousy is such a thing that the irony in the whole thing is that when it comes to a person who's jealous of you, his jealousy is sufficient a punishment for him. You don't need to do anything to get back at him. If you know that somebody is jealous of you, just you being happy is sufficient punishment for him. Because the more he sees you happy, the more he sees you enjoying the bounty that he doesn't want you to enjoy. A jealous person reaches such a despicable level that even if he can't enjoy that bounty, he just doesn't want you to enjoy it. It's one thing to say, oh Allah, what you've granted him, grant me as well. Don't deprive him of it. Grant me that as well. That's fine. That's permissible. We mustn't do it too often because it can then become dangerous. But oh Allah, you've granted him, that particular bounty, grant it to me as well. But a jealous person, oh Allah, he mustn't have it. He mustn't have it. If I can't have it also, it's fine, but he mustn't have it because you're jealous over that person. So seeing, for a jealous person to see you happy, that's enough revenge for you because it makes him even more miserable. It makes him even more miserable. And I think what we need to understand is jealousy is one of the biggest realities, but it's also one of the biggest excuses and scapegoats. What do I mean by that? Jealousy is one of the biggest realities. That's why Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has revealed verses of the Quran. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ وَمِنْ شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبَ وَمِنْ شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ وَمِنْ شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. We are taught to seek protection from the jealous people. But at the same time, so jealousy is a reality. It lurks in the hearts of many people, sometimes even those closest to us. But it's also the greatest excuse. Sometimes when people offer you constructive criticism, you say, yeah, no, they're jealous of me. They're jealous of me. That's why they're saying that. But the comment is constructive. The comment is justified and it's valid. You were wrong. What you did was out of line. Now when it's being brought to your notice with the best of intentions and in a constructive and a valid and a proper way, then you just hide behind the smoke screen or behind the screen of jealousy. That's wrong. So it's the biggest reality, but it's also the biggest excuse and scapegoat where people use it to hide away from their deficiencies, to just to turn a deaf ear or not to give attention to constructive feedback and constructive criticism. One of the biggest issues these days, scholars have written, and social workers will tell you, is sibling rivalry and jealousy between brothers and sisters, between sister and sister, between brother and brother. And this is where it's so critical and so important for parents to step in, for parents to play their part. Sometimes it's natural for you to have a little bit more love for one child over the other. It's natural sometimes. The akhlaq, the character, the demeanor of one child is more heartwarming to you than that of the other. The other might be a bit more rebellious, etc. But sometimes we become so manifest in showing our preference for one child over the other that resentment builds in the heart. Remember, we are discussing a heart free of malice and hatred. And one of the consequences of hatred and malice is jealousy. So now what happens? The parent is constantly siding with the one child. The parent is constantly taking the part of the one child. The parent, because the one child is the favorite, is constantly allowing the one child to get away with things. So the other child now starts to have hatred and malice towards their sibling. And that hatred and malice turns towards jealousy. And for as long as they're living in their parents' home, it's now a competitive relationship. Yes, to an extent, there's always a bit of sibling rivalry, right? I want to do better than my brother in school. I want to do better than my sister in the kitchen, or whatever the case may be. But now this goes beyond that healthy limit. And, it's aggressive. And if the one party comes off second best, they're very angry about it. They become very dejected. They become very bitter about it. And it flows over. Sometimes, and this is unfortunately found more so among sisters. It's found more so among sisters in the social aspect, and it's found more so amongst brothers in the financial aspect. Sometimes it may be that the younger brother makes it bigger financially than the elder brother. And now the elder brother starts to suffer from a bit of a complex that my younger bro, he's made it more in life, made it in a very limited sense, in a financial sense. And now a bit of hatred and malice sets in, that translates into jealousy. And it becomes sibling jealousy. And this has catastrophic consequences because of the family unit. It's not just one person who's jealous of another. It's one brother who's jealous of another. Now you get two sisters who are jealous of each other. So what happens? If the mother now shows a bit of attention to the one child, you're always only giving attention to her children, because now it's not only that jealousy that was there when you were in your parents' home. Now you want to see your children also getting more attention from your parents. You want to see your husband also getting more attention from your parents. So that what happens now is that even in your adulthood, even in your marriage, that sibling jealousy is still there. That jealousy between sisters or between brothers is still there. If my sister's son became a hafidh, my son must become a hafidh, even if he can't manage. And all of this is because at some point or the other, there was a bit of hatred and a bit of malice that set in. And then parents get caught in the crossfire. They get caught in the crossfire between their own daughters who are at war, or who are at each other's throats, or are trying to compete and outdo each other, or their own sons who are trying to outdo each other. Also, what we need to understand, that there's a difference between jealousy and ambition. Islam doesn't say that you must be, mediocre in your approach. No. One is it's good to have ambition, that whatever you do, you must try and do it to the best of your ability. But you must try and do it to the best of your ability. If somebody else can do it better, or they can do it as well as you can do it, then alhamdulillah, that is something that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has granted to them. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. That is the grace of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, that He grants to whomsoever He wills. So you should not be jealous of it. But we mustn't use jealousy as an excuse for us to be lethargic, for us not to make an effort, not to try to do our best. No. I don't make too much of an effort. I just go with the flow. No, that's also wrong. Do the best that you can. Yes. When you see others excel, let that motivate you to also excel. But at the same time, if you come off second best, then you must be gracious in that regard, and you must say, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has blessed that person. Taking a simple example, if it's in an academic sense, okay, that person came first, let me motivate myself to try and come out first in the next exam. But if I cannot, if that person still beats me, alhamdulillah, that is what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has willed, and I am happy for that person. But at the same time, I tried my best. I didn't say, okay, no, I'm not interested. I'll just go and write the exam for the sake of passing, because I don't want to become jealous of anybody, and I don't want to compete, and I only do it for the pleasure of Allah. That is also wrong. So we are discussing jealousy as a consequence of hatred and malice in the heart. Our topic for the series during these Sundays in the month of Ramadan is a heart free of malice and hatred. A heart free of malice and hatred. And Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi said, the first consequence of having hatred and malice in your heart is that you will become a jealous person. Jealousy will enter your heart. Now, we open the lines. The number to dial is 011 086 7701. That's 011 086 7701. The question I'm asking this morning, in your opinion, what is the first step that we need to take to cleanse our hearts of hatred and malice? What is the first step that we need to take to cleanse our hearts of hatred and malice? What is your opinion in that regard? You can call now. The lines are open. 011 086 7701. In the interim, we go for a quick break.
فبالجهاد بنى الإسلام قوته كاليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Okay, welcome back to the Sulaiman Ravat Show. We continue our discussion on a heart free of malice and hatred. And this morning we have been discussing the eight consequences that flow from having hatred and malice in the heart, according to Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh. And the one is that hatred and malice in the heart manifests itself in the form of jealousy. And that is what we have been discussing before the break. And now we're going to be talking about the second, and that is when you have hatred and malice in your heart, then it manifests itself in the form of arguments. You become very argumentative. You always want to prove your point. You always want to debate. You always want to have the last say, so to speak. But before that, just to remind our viewers once again, the lines are open. The question we're asking you, and you can contribute to the program, what is the first step in your opinion? In your opinion, what is the first step that we need to take to cleanse our hearts of hatred and malice? All right, let's go to the callers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Call online. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Where are you calling from, brother?
I'm calling from Chatsworth, sir.
Oh, mashallah, from Chatsworth. Your thoughts on the matter?
Well, Malana put a question forward about the malice of the heart and what's the remedy for it. So he asked us to call in.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, so can I speak to you?
You're live on air, brother. You're live on air. You're talking to Sulaiman Ravat.
Okay, Mr. Rawat, assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak to you, sir.
Ramadan Mubarak to you as well.
Malana, I think if we got taqwa and salah, I think that could be the remedy.
Taqwa and, I missed the second part. There's a bit of a feedback in my earpiece. Yeah. Taqwa and?
Salah.
Salah. Okay. Okay, now. Valid contribution, brother. Jazakumullah for that.
Okay, wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, that was the brother from Chatsworth, taqwa and salah. Yes, this is the month of Ramadan. And when you have taqwa, when you're conscious of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and when you know that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala knows what is in your heart, then it makes it all the easier for you to rid your heart of all of that which is not supposed to be there. Because even though others may not see it, others may assume that you are very pious, and others may assume that you only have good thoughts in your heart, and others may assume that you only have good feelings in your heart. But if you know, and all of us know, this is what we believe. We just need to enhance that belief and enhance that consciousness that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is aware of what's in the inner recesses of our hearts. If we know that, then that makes it easier for us to rid our hearts of hatred and malice. And this is what the month of Ramadan is all about. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that your fasting takes you to that point where you can boost your levels of taqwa. It makes your heart more receptive to the spirituality that is on offer from your recitation of the Quran, from your listening to the recitation of the Quran in the Taraweeh Salah, etc. And when that happens, then obviously it boosts your levels of taqwa, as we were explaining in the weeks leading up to the month of Ramadan. So enhance your taqwa. That's one step that the brother says. And naturally, by enhancing your taqwa and salah as well, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. That salah protects you from every evil and salah protects you from every vice. So these are two effective remedies in terms of the initial steps or the basic steps when it comes to cleansing our hearts of hatred and malice. The lines are still open. The number is on your screen, 011-086-7701. As soon as I get an indication that our next caller is on the line, we will go to that caller, inshallah. In the meanwhile, we continue the discussion. So Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi says that you have different things that flow from having hatred and malice in the heart. And he talks about 8 things primarily. The one is jealousy. The second is that you become very argumentative. And arguments is something which is very detrimental to your deen. One is to have a good discussion. One is to have mature and robust interaction and debate. That's a different matter, because that's good, differing viewpoints in a mashwara, in a meeting, where you try and get differing perspectives from people. You try and get differing, viewpoints to try and get a broader understanding of the topic at hand, of the issue at hand. That's something that's good. But when it becomes personal, when it's ego-driven rather than issue-driven, then this is something which is harmful. This is something which is definitely detrimental. And this is something which is then motivated by hatred and by malice. I think I'm getting an indication that the communication is a bit bad. I think, is there another call on the line? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Caller, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh, where are you calling from?
I'm come from Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth.
Yes, brother. How are you keeping?
Yeah, my question is, Sheikh, when you...
I'm listening to you, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to ask you when I want to ask you my question. When you're dreaming for the night time, at the suhoor time, you see the last time you eat from the night time, you see. And that question, when you're dreaming, and the song you will be...
No, I'm sorry, brother. I can't. I'm sorry. I just
Wait,
cannot hear you. What I think we'll do... What we'll do is we'll just go for a quick break. Let's see if we can just sort out some of these technical glitches and hopefully continue taking the calls after the break, inshallah. You are watching the Sulaiman Ravat Show. We're talking about a heart that's free of hatred and malice.
فبالجهاد بنى الإسلام كاليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Okay, welcome back to the Sulaiman Ravat Show. Hopefully this time around we've sorted out all of the technical difficulties and the lines are still open. We are asking you that in your opinion, what is the first step that we need to take? The first step that we need to take to rid our hearts of hatred and malice. And the number is on your screen. We wait your calls, inshallah. As soon as your calls come, we will take those calls. Now, we were talking in the interim about what happens when you have hatred and malice in your heart. We spoke about jealousy. The other is you become very argumentative. Imam Malik rahimahullah has said that one is you get a physical type of quarrel. This is when people physically go at each other. You fist fight, when fists are flying. And the other is where you have verbal controversies. Now, again, I must be very clear. We're not saying that there isn't room for academic debate. There isn't room for robust discussion and exchange of ideas. But when it starts becoming personal, where you go now on a propaganda campaign, where it's motivated by trying to disgrace the person or undermine the person, or, to try and insult the person, then this is where you need to say that this is now motivated by hatred and malice. This is now the person is not looking at the issue. The person is not trying to give a clearer perspective or a better perspective or a counter argument. Rather, the person is actually trying to get back at the other person. So, for example, when you're sitting in a mashwara, one person proposes one idea. You have a different idea. That's fine. That's what the purpose of mashwara is all about. But if you're merely countering the mashwara because you don't like that person, because you have something in your heart for that person, then that is where we say you just merely become argumentative. You're trying to find a fly in the ointment, as they say. You're trying to find a fault in that person's proposal simply because you don't like that person. You may not realize it at the time, but there's nothing wrong with what that person is suggesting. You're playing the man rather than the ball. Let's go to the caller. Caller, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yusuf, you're going to just have to help me with that earpiece. Caller, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Gee, sister.
Can I just tell you, the remedy for jealousy and malice is salah and zikr, forgive and forget, fear of Allah. We must behave like Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
I like the way you put it, sister, in a most eloquent way. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Durban.
Durban, mashallah, mashallah. May Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala accept and have a wonderful Ramadan.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That was sister from Durban. The number to dial, as you can see it appear on your screen, 011 086 7701. What, in your opinion, is the first step that we need to take in terms of ridding our hearts of hatred and malice, in terms of cleansing our hearts? Perhaps you've been in this situation and you've had to... It's a painful process, for a person to come to that realization and say, you know what, my heart needs some cleaning. But Rather come to that realization. Don't be in denial. Don't say, like, when your clothes have become soiled, rather realize, hey, my clothes are dirty. I need to do something about it. I either need to change my clothes or I need to clean my clothes so that I don't continue to come across as a person with dirty clothes. Similarly, our hearts, it's easier to conceal from people so you don't face immediate embarrassment. But rather, let's come to that realization now that, hey, I've got some dirt in my heart and I need to deal with it before I'm embarrassed in front of the entire creation on the day of Qiyamah. Let's go to our next caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Caller, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You're live on air on the Sulaiman Ravat Show this morning on ITV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I can hear the background sounds. I can't hear your voice. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, there seems to be some problem. Let's go to the next caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Ji sister, where are you calling from?
Maaf, I'm calling from Lenasia.
Ji sister, from Lenasia, mashallah.
Mulana Ravat, firstly, Jazakallah for the thought-inspiring lecture. With regard to your question about how we can perhaps help ourselves to cleanse us of jealousy, I thought that maybe the first thing we need to do is just learn to be content with the little that we have. And appreciate simple things like just getting up in the morning and knowing that you have your health, that you can breathe, that you have your limbs. And something that my mom always taught us is that if you feel that you don't have enough, look at someone that's lower than you so that you can appreciate with what you do have.
Profound, profound. You know, you're so right. We take all of these small things for granted. We wake up and we have a spouse that we love with us. We have children that adore us and whom we adore. We have functioning limbs. We have health. We have so much going for us, but our eye is always on that we don't have. We don't look at all the things that are going right in our lives. We look at those things that are going wrong. And as a result, we allow for hatred and malice to creep into our hearts. We allow for jealousy to consume us. And we kind of lose the plot. We forget to focus on that which is going well and which is positive in our lives. And we over-focus on that which is negative. Jazakallah for the call, sister. Much appreciated.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The lines are still open. What, in your opinion, is the first step that we need to take in order to rid our hearts of jealousy and hatred and malice? Remember this on this program for the Sundays in the month of Ramadan, we are discussing a heart free of malice and hatred. And last week we did some of the introductory points. This week we commenced the second part of the discussion where Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi alayhi says, when you have hatred and malice in your heart, it's going to manifest itself in 8 ways primarily. The first is you're going to become a jealous person. The second is you're going to become an argumentative person, and that's what we're discussing at the moment. And we're going to move on to the others, the remaining 6 in this 8. But let's go to our next caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Hello. Wa alaikum salam.
Ji sister, where are you calling from?
I'm phoning from Santon. My name is Jamila.
Ji sister Jamila.
And you were actually looking for some recommendations on how we can cleanse our heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first thing is to be God conscious.
Yep.
And the second thing is to believe that Allah provides sustenance to whom Allah wishes. So that means that Allah gives more to the one than the other. But that is nothing that we have control over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So people must stop running to the sangomas, or as they call it, dukums, for black magic, to hurt the brother or the sister that's progressing. The fourth thing I would like to say is that to always say, MashaAllah, whenever somebody has something good or even bad to say.
Yep.
And then you were talking about the argumentative stuff. You know what? I think, first of all, that we as Muslims need to learn to respect the next person. Because you know what? So often that doesn't happen. I was witness to something in a mosque in Fortsburg the other evening where a lady was about to deliver a lecture, and then a gentleman got up and he said that is not appropriate. So you know what? Ladies can also have something to say, but it wasn't maybe the appropriate time, which I understand, but the way they went about it of the man that actually had some comment about it. You know what? They could have called him one side. So that is why I say we need to respect one another.
Indeed.
And that's all I can recommend, and that is how a person can cleanse your heart.
Jazakumullah for your
Shukran,
contribution, sister.
jazakallah.
Much appreciated. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You know, the one aspect that the sister touched on, you'll be surprised how many people get involved in this. And I suppose this is something that we'll have to touch on independently at some point. Muslim people who go to these sangomas, witch doctors, and you know, they have become so bold and blatant that they actually come to masjid parking lots and place their advertisements on our windscreens. That I can bring back your long lost lover, I can bring back the spark in your marriage, I can double your income, I can help you win the lotto. It goes totally against the core of what we believe in as Muslims. I mean, if they can bring back all your wealth that you've lost, then why can't they make themselves millionaires? Why do they need to fleece you of your money? And we know how these things work. They work with the rebellious shayateen. We know that they work with actions that are totally haram in the Sharia. Why do we need to resort to such behavior? Because we have this hatred and malice in our hearts. We don't have a heart that's free of hatred and malice. So jealousy comes in. We become argumentative. And when we become argumentative, the ego is bruised more often. And we say, no, I'll show you now. So I couldn't win you in the argument. I'll get somebody to harm you on my behalf. Let's go to our last caller. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh ta'ala. Sheikh, my name is Abdullahi. Then I'm calling to you from the BE.
MashaAllah, Abdullah. Welcome.
Yeah, Sheikh, last couple of months, my sister and my sister-in-law, they fight each other. Then they feel each other, they jealousy the way I'm going to. My sister, she feel jealous with my sister-in-law to visiting her house every time. Then she told me they stop to visiting her. Then I told her she's my sister-in-law and you are my sister. Then she said, okay, if you go to her, they don't come to my side anymore. So if I catch her, what will they? How it's about to see a religion about this?
Mm-hmm. Yes, unfortunately, it's a problem in many families, and I'll respond to that. May Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala make it easy for you, brother.
Ameen, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yes, the brother brings up one point that we're going to be discussing a little bit later in one of the weeks, inshallah, that one of the manifestations of hatred and malice in the heart, from the 8 that we're talking, we're only on the second one of the manifestations is that it results in the breaking of family ties. Now, here he's saying, if I understood him correctly, is that there seems to be some issue between the sister and the sister-in-law, and the sister is saying, if you visit the sister-in-law, don't visit me. This is totally an impermissible demand to make. You cannot make such a demand. You cannot tell somebody that don't maintain family ties. If you have an issue with X, you cannot tell Z not to visit X, especially if they're family, especially if there's family ties that need to be maintained. Whatever your issue is, firstly, you yourself are not supposed to be breaking family ties. And we're going to get to that, as I said, in one of our later discussions. But that's what happens, you see. Even the pious of the pious, the most pious of people, it becomes something that's toxic now. And that's why having a heart that contains even a few traces of hatred and malice is so dangerous, because not only does it consume you now, it starts having an effect on other people. When you have hatred towards someone, you expect your spouse to show enmity towards that person. You expect your children to show enmity towards that person as well. You expect now your brothers and sisters to show solidarity with you against that person. And all of that is wrong. But just to wrap up now, we've got about a minute left or so. On that second point, that you become very argumentative when you have hatred and malice in your heart, I want to wrap up on a few ahadith pertaining to the controlling of the tongue, because that's got to do with argumentative. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the most distant of people from me are those who all the time are arguing, who talk a lot, because when you talk a lot, you have no control of your tongue, who talk for long periods of time. We're not talking of beneficial religious talks. That is obviously a different matter. And if you look at one or two ahadith in this regard, once a sahabi asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, how do I attain salvation? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Amlik alayka lisanak. Control your tongue. Take control of your tongue. In another hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was asked, Ayyul a'mali ahabbu ila Allah? That which action is the most beloved to Allah? He said, Hifzul lisan, protecting the tongue. Again, we all claim to be believers. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said, La yablughul abd haqiqat al-iman. You can never reach the true essence of iman until you control your tongue. Actually, your good fortune and your ill fortune lies between your jaws, meaning your tongue will determine whether you are a fortunate person or whether you are an unfortunate person, because your tongue will control whether Allah is going to reward you and you're going to be punished. We need to discipline ourselves in terms of remaining silent for long periods of time and only speaking when necessary. رحم الله عبدا تكلم فغنم أو سكت فسلم. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, may Allah have mercy on that person who when he keeps quiet, he's saved. And when he talks, then he talks that which is beneficial. That now, respected viewers, brings us to the end of this edition of the Sulaiman Ravat Show. The second Sunday during this month of Ramadan, we're coming to you live from our studios in ITV. And we'll continue this discussion, the series on a heart which is free of hatred and malice next week, inshallah. And as I said, for the remaining Sundays during the month of Ramadan. Until then, fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
فاستنهضي همما فالمسجد الأقصى ما زال يدعونا ندي على الفتية الأحرار في زمن أضحى به الحق بالخذلان مدفونا فبالجهاد بنى الإسلام قوته وهل لغير القوي الناس يصغونا رباه هيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا فأنت من بالتقى والدين يهدينا أدعوك يا أمتي فاستنهضي همما فالمسجد الأقصى ما زال يدعونا ندي على الفتية الأحرار في زمن أضحى به الحق بالخير